I'm Chris Hatch. I'm the Chief Research Officer at Lux Research. And with me today, I have Rob von Leen, the Chief Innovation Officer for DSM. Now, Rob, you've got a fascinating role, and then there was a journey you took to get to the Chief Innovation Officer position. Tell us a little bit about that journey. How did you end up there? What was your motivation? And what was the background that made you the person for the job?
I think the background for the company was that we wanted to move from internally looking to externally looking and use innovation more as a driver for the business growth. So before that, that was in 2006, DSM was more an operational excellence focused company, and we wanted to have more market-driven innovation and growth. I was running at that point in time our food business, and I had been experimenting with what we now call an innovation center for DSM, a small innovation center in that food business, and that was fairly successful. So I was asked to do the same thing for the whole company and use the same setup with a new business development center outside the scope of the running business, but not completely in isolation. And that's what I've been trying to do since 2006.
Right. Now, there's the internal relationship of your role. The relationship between the Chief Innovation Officer and the Chief Technology Officer is always sometimes it can be contentious in some companies. It can be confusing in some companies. How do you manage that relationship in DSM? What is the synergy that you try and find in the two roles?
Yeah, I always say we are two sides of the same coin because we need our technology to get to new know-how, insights, what have you. So we use money to convert it into know-how, and then that know-how we try to bring into products that are profitable in the market to get to new money. So that is a cycle that both of us manage. The way it's set up is in DSM that the CTO reports to the Chief Innovation Officer. That is a practical way of doing things. I report to the CEO, but we both are in the top leadership team of the company.
Right.
So I think it's clearly not contentious at all. I think it works very well together. And I think the main idea of setting it up like this was in 2006 when we were very internally focused and our R&D was still more an internal university than anything else. And we got the blame that we spent a lot of money, but not a lot came out of it. I think that by now is more or less gone, that notion. We have indeed changed a lot. We have increased our speed of innovation more than double in the meantime. And there is never is maybe a big word, but there is no longer this idea that R&D is just spending money because they like it or something. No, it's all very much aimed to the business goals and the business drivers that we have, and also all the business groups no longer question that at all.
Right. Okay. Now, the interesting part of that is, and in that relationship is the overall portfolio management and presumably you work on horizons. So companies have Horizon 1, 2, and 3. And I know you have eBuzz that you work on, which is very much Horizon 3 for the most part.
Clearly.
Who has control, or how does that portfolio, the overall portfolio, get managed to make sure that all horizons are addressed and business unit needs are addressed? What's the dynamic there?
Well, in the end, of course, that is the managing board of DSM that more or less decides it, but we have agreed on a couple of principles. And one of them is that we more or less invest about 25% of all we do in what we call Redbox. So those are business fields that are not addressed by the current business groups of DSM. Yeah. That is all put in the innovation center to give it air cover, as we say, so time to grow without the daily pressure. The other part is managed by the business groups, so that's 75% of what we do. But we have an innovation council where all the innovation directors of all the business groups sit, including myself. I chair that council. Got it. And together we oversee the whole innovation in the company. We have the joint programs for acceleration. We together manage the Redbox composition.
Got it.
So, and then we give advice to the managing board how to deal with those things.
Right, got it. And this idea of the 25% and in these very emerging fields, very very new to DSM. That's how long are you there yet? Are you at 25% now, and how long have you been there?
Well, we have grown that since 2006. I think we reached about 30% at a certain point in
Really?
time. And then we thought, okay, now this is sort of getting out of hand because all of these things grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
So that's when we started to focus a little bit.
Okay.
And now we're, this year I think we're 24.
Got it.
So
So you'll bounce it around 25.
Yeah.
as a
So
rough
and
target.
then we said, no, more or less this is what we can afford. This is more or less what we should do, and keep
Got
it
it.
more or less in this ballpark.
Got it. How did that 30 to 25% sort of downshift occur? Was that just looking at programs that maybe didn't fit, or was it right sizing the programs that you had? Was it a mix?
It's just focus. So
Okay.
we took out projects that we felt in the whole scale were maybe at position 5, 6, 7, and we said let's first do the first 4.
Yeah.
And we've done it throughout those EBAs.
Yeah, got it.
So only focus on those things that you feel are the most prominent and probably have the best chance of succeeding.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Now you mentioned in 2006 that the R&D group it felt like a university, and everyone wondered when results would come out. It was a little bit inconsistent, or maybe not delivering what was hoped for the investment.
Yeah.
And obviously that's changed now, and that was part of the responsibility and the mission that you had. So what is the distribution now between what happens internally and how you look at R&D spend or innovation spend that occurs externally? Do you track that at all?
Yeah, sure. It varies very much per business.
Okay.
So there are businesses that are above 10%. And on top of that, of course, you also need to take into account that we have now more than in the past also technology that we source externally, like licensing in or M&A of small startups. We do the corporate venturing that we do.
Yeah.
So, and that has grown actually, and the internal R&D hasn't grown that much. So I would say most of the growth has come from the external element, which is also easier to do, of course, because if you say, whatever, let's do 10-15% externally, and you first need to cut a few hundred R&D people to make that possible, that is, of course, a more difficult journey than that you say, we grow into external.
Bigger pie means one slice can stay the same.
And that has worked quite well for a couple of years. Now we are more or less stable at the same level.
Okay, so you think that's optimized? So that 10 to 15%, does that feel about right?
Well, 15 would be great.
Okay.
But I think there are still businesses where we are nowhere near that, and there are businesses that are clearly there. So that it has also a little bit to do sometimes with the composition of the business, but also still sometimes with the traditional mindset of the not invented here syndrome.
Okay, so you still, even with the success, and DSM is looked at as being very successful from an innovation perspective.
Yeah.
Even with that success, there are still
pockets where
ongoing challenges, and there's still work to do.
Yeah, and of course, also when we acquire businesses that have not gone through this journey, they basically need to catch up. So, and then, because a big part of the company is already in this mindset, we assume that the others will catch on immediately, but that's actually not the case. So you basically also there have to go through the journey for several years before they are at the same level of comfort with it.
Got it. What's the biggest thing you've learned of this journey you've been on to date? What's the biggest learning that you would tell people right now?
I think so many things, but the most important is that most of our failures have come from not checking early enough and thoroughly enough whether somebody was actually waiting for those wonderful inventions and for those solutions that we thought we had for the world.
Yeah.
And so many examples of that if you look at our graveyard, I think that is where most of it can be learned.
Yeah.
And I always say some of our internal experts in those new business fields are just a few weeks ahead of us when we do the project reviews. And I think what you should introduce is people that are a couple of years ahead of you externally, that really know what they are talking about, and they will challenge your plans and say, really? Nobody's waiting for this. And that is what you need to bring in, and that's for some people, I would say, uncomfortable, but it's probably the best thing you can do.
Yeah. So how much of so that's hiring and capability. How much of it is also solved by more rapid evaluation and I guess access to the outside world? So having more conversations across a value chain, looking at different angles, different capabilities. Is that there's a balance in there as well, right?
So that is of course happening far more than in the past.
Right.
And the way we look also at the setting up of ventures versus doing project management. So in the past we were doing really project management, stage gating and so on a project level. Mm-hmm. Now we say we want to create a venture. A venture is probably made up of several projects, but also things we bring in from the outside. So we look at the whole thing and we look at the maturity of a venture with the method that we have adopted from the Bell Mason Group. And that says something a little bit like a stage gate, but then for the maturity of a venture. Around 12 different elements that will tell you how far you are along in setting up a new business.
Right, got it. And that's interesting. You mentioned venturing. The venturing arm of the business that clearly falls under the CIO's purview.
Yeah.
What's the value that the venturing group brings to you that other functions, or what do you look to them to do that maybe you can't get anywhere else? What's the one thing they do for you?
It's an important element in the scouting that we do. Mm-hmm. We look at about 500 companies per year, and especially in the fields where we want to innovate and where we want to move into. So what it does is that it gives us through those companies an insight in how that is developing. Since we only invest in about 1% of the companies we look at, it predominantly tells us what not to do.
Right.
And it gives us clues where things are moving. And there's hardly any other tool that you can use to do that so efficiently and so effectively.
Okay, perfect. So I guess one last question to finish off. What does success look like for you? The way you view the CIO role, the way you view its impact on DSM. What does that look like for you 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What's your vision?
Okay. Well, what I would be very proud of, and I think we can reach that in 10 years from now, is that our total portfolio is really aimed at the sustainability goals that we strive for. Okay. So like we call it People Plus or Eco Plus. We are very much progressing on that. And then that there are a couple of very tangible businesses by that time. For instance, I really hope that the biofuels business, the second generation biofuels business that is using waste, biomass, corn stover, cane trash, wood, whatever. So that we really go to the circular economy, that we really stop polluting the planet and increasing the temperature, because I really think the world is on the wrong track.
Yeah.
And we have the capabilities of solving at least part of those problems, and I would be very proud of having a couple of those solutions put in place for the world.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I asked that same question of many executives, and many will talk about financial outcomes. They'll talk about growth of the business. They'll talk in very concrete terms. Your response was very mission driven. It was more passion driven.
It is, but by the way, I'm also convinced that will come along with good business.
Sure, no, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone's always said that the chance of success goes up if there's passion behind the mission of that success.
Yeah.
So no, that's fascinating. Again, Rob, thanks for your time. DSM is looked at around the world as being one of the leaders in the kind of innovation best practices. So I really appreciate the time and the insights.
Well, you're welcome.